Are you sabotaging your own sales team? Check out this episode. Hey everybody, it's Ben here from the Building Business channel, and I've got Zach from Sales Rabbit with me today. I want to talk a little bit about sales, just core sales process. I think I see a lot of customers having their salespeople do things that salespeople aren't normally good at. Do you see that very often?
All the time. We often talk about this. We see a lot of these groups that have their sales reps in the sales role of some sort, whether they're setting appointments or they're actually closing deals, but they have them doing roles that can be done by someone else or an automated system or process like software. And so what we see is that sales reps and sales orgs should be really focused on really three things. They should be focused on prospecting, generating new leads and working those leads. They should be focused on pitching those leads and then converting them into a closed account and new revenue. And that's really the core focus of what those individuals should be doing.
When you're looking at your sales process, how can you tell if your salespeople aren't doing what their sort of God-given power is in sales?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I like to look at it like you would call it an assembly line or a manufacturing line, right? If you step into a factory where they're producing something over and over again, it's very systematic. It's very reproducible.
There's a lot of handoffs.
Yes, and you know exactly the performance metrics of each of those stages in that conveyor belt process. Sales can actually be very similar. And if you have a benchmarked process with data that shows how each of those stages should function, you can begin to compare human performance against a standard or a measure. And one of the challenges that a lot of these orgs have is they don't actually have benchmark data. They don't have a process that creates a repeatable outcome that they can measure all of the human behavior across their sales org in different sales offices in different states against this standard. And part of the challenge is they haven't created a system that is universally scalable and implementable in these different types of regions or territories or sales teams that they have. And so they never actually generate data that then is reliable, and that they can use to guide the changes in their systems and processes and or how a sales rep is complying with that process or not. So that's the first part, is do you have a system or process that creates universal data and repeatable outcomes that you can begin to measure all of the performance against?
So you mentioned data several times in there. What kind of data should you be looking for? What are some typical numbers that you should be monitoring your sales team on?
Totally. And look, every org will have some version of their own key performance indicator, right?
But there's a lot of similarities.
There's a lot of standard KPIs, and anyone can Google.
By the way, KPI, what does that stand for?
Key performance indicator. Great. Yeah, it's the things that you care about most in your business, right? There's this old saying that what goes unmeasured doesn't get managed, right? And so we're trying to incorporate better management, better leadership. Part of that starts with measuring our teams and their performance. And so when we think about measuring sales organizations' performance, there's the sales org performance. That could be a region, a territory. It could be a team. It could be a setter and a closer that work together. However you're structured, right? They all are going to have different KPIs that correlate to the activity that they are doing and how well they're performing at that activity. And so what we tend to see is sales orgs will manage things like on the prospecting side, how many leads did they contact in a day, in a week, in a month?
Because that's a predictor of future success.
Yes, you can then use that key indicator to look back in time to see what happened, what's happening in the present, and what will most likely happen in the future. And that puts you into a seat of empowerment where you can begin to get more intentional with your business when you can predict what's probably going to happen, right? So again, focusing on these three kind of pillars of prospecting, pitching, and closing, let's look at KPIs inside of those three different aspects. So when we think about prospecting, it's leads contacted. It's from those leads contacted, what was the disposition outcome, right? Did they say they're not interested? Did they say that they would like to get a quote or proposal? Did they actually move towards qualifying for financing?
Yeah.
Like, let's track all of those things so that as a leadership team, we can begin to look at those and say, how are we performing as a company, as a region, as a team, as a pair of salespeople in this one indicator of leads contacted, right? And then if we move into the next piece of pitching, it's what happened as a result of that pitch. So, hey, maybe I got a scheduled appointment to come back and pitch them and sit down and close, or it's a remote sale that I'm doing with them. What was the outcome of that second stage of the sales process, right? Did I qualify them? Did I send them to get a credit check? Did I get a financial qualification? Did they get turned down? Of those that I qualified, how many got turned down? I mean, you're starting to measure all these little things that are happening in the sales process, because you may find that, John on your sales team, for some reason, he is so good at prospecting.
Yep.
But man, he gets to the close, and for some reason, that guy just keeps hitting this one thing.
Yep.
Well, if you can narrow in on what John is having that issue with, his manager, Joe, can now sit down with him and be like, John, dude, you are killing it at these things. But every time you get here, like, here's the data. This isn't just my opinion. Like, this is what the data says is happening. And if we can get you past this, last month, you would have made X dollars more in closes if we could just move this 10%. Let's focus on getting you to close 10% more of these in this stage, because next month, based on past data, it means that you could make an extra $8,000 or $10,000 or whatever that number is, right? And now you're making it personal and meaningful to that sales rep, and you've incentivized him with a clear vision of what could become if he changes his behavior or she changes her behavior.
I like that you use the analogy of machines or like a factory model or something like that, because when you think about it, when you're looking at machines and you're looking at an assembly line, you're always looking for your bottlenecks. How do you identify your bottlenecks in sales?
Again, data, right? If you don't have data, you need to start putting systems in place that generate data, and the data reveals that. But in general, I mean, you can kind of go into a situation if your management and leadership team is communicating with their sales teams often and doing trainings, they're getting that feedback. Sales reps are very good at giving feedback. In fact, that's one of the challenges that a lot of business owners have with them, is they don't like always receiving the type of feedback they get from sales reps, because they're very vocal. Mm-hmm. Because what they're doing is they're natural optimizers. They're getting into your business and they're telling you everything that's not working and where it could be improved so that they can close more deals. Because again, they really care about three things. They want to prospect, they want to pitch, and they want to close. And they want those three things to happen in their optimal fashion. And what you'll find is that sales reps will begin to deviate from corporate mandated processes, and they become lone wolves because they're generating a better process that closes more deals. And then everyone in the sales org is like, oh man, how are you getting that done?
I want to do what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, I do this, and it's not always popular because it may not be the corporate administrative process. And so when we talk about generating really good processes and getting feedback, there are things we can do, like basic surveys. You can generate a survey on one of the Google Forms tools, for example, and send out a survey to a specific team or a certain cohort of sales reps, and find out what they're doing or not doing, or what works or what doesn't work for them, and begin to generate just insight from them.
So you kind of touched on an intangible of selling that I think is really interesting. You were talking about how good sales reps, I think you said, break the rules in some ways.
Yeah.
And that might be something that if your sales rep's not breaking the rules, they might not be a good sales rep too. Because part of this is you're looking for people that know how to optimize and work around problems. That's how you get sales done. So when you're trying to set up a process, if you have too many rules, will those people that like to break rules not succeed in that process? Sometimes process is rules. It gets a little concerning. What do you think?
It's not a good process if it's not breathable and flexible.
Okay.
And part of the challenge is when you're building a process is a lot of times, a lot of these groups are using a process that's been prescribed to them from a software vendor.
Yep.
Or it's something that they inherited from the past company they worked for, or they cobbled it together from 3 different companies, or they saw that someone was doing this and they tried to incorporate it. The problem is they didn't design a process that is universal, that is breathable, that is flexible, that accommodates for these different situations that a sales rep might incur. And so as a result, they then force the sales rep to move outside of the process. Now, good sales process design means that there's a lot of things that happen in the background that the sales rep never has to think about or experience.
Oh, tell me about that.
So like, for example, part of selling a solar system, right? Or a lot of these products or services require financing.
Yeah.
Well, the financing process to qualify someone can sometimes be really burdensome as a sales rep.
Cumbersome.
Especially if I'm in your house and we're talking, face to face, and I'm trying to carry a conversation, and I'm also trying to do something that's very personal, like get your financial details.
Yeah, it's a little awkward.
And ask you these questions. I mean, good sales rep does it really well and it's smooth, right? But again, when you think about building a really scalable sales process that like anyone can come into your org and begin to thrive with, because you want to hand a sales process to a sales rep where it's basically a box and they turn that handle and money comes out and they succeed. And so when we think about building a sales process that has systems automated in the background, we can automate a lot of those financial processes and make it very easy and smooth to submit for a credit check or a financial underwriting of some sort with the organizations that you sell, loans that you sell, So there are things like that. That's one example of many where all of a sudden the rep begins to comply with the corporate sales process. It's easier because we all know that sales reps like the least path of resistance. And this is something that I think actually is very important. I see a lot of sales reps not honored.
Absolutely.
For the wonderful scientific, artistic work that they do. And it's like, we're like, well, why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? Why can't they do it this way? Well, because they're spending so much of their human energy trying to influence someone to make a commitment to buy this product or service. And oftentimes we don't respect the amount of energy that takes and the amount of art and science that goes into that process. And so when we begin to honor the sales reps and we begin to respect them for the amazing talent that they have, and we begin to realize, oh my gosh, there's so much I can do to administratively improve the process that I asked them, that box that I'm handing them to crank on to get cash out of, all of a sudden I begin to build an optimal sales process. And this is so important when you think about scaling and growing your business. One of the ways that you scale and grow your business is by innovating the process that you give to the sales reps.
Because 100%, it's where it all starts.
Yeah, if John can go work for company A and close more deals and he's selling the same product, the same services, John is going to naturally gravitate towards company A because they have this amazing recruiting narrative around their processes and how much better they are and that they close on average more deals per month. What does John really care about? Well, John probably cares about how much money he makes a month. Sales reps are very financially driven. Well, they're also driven by a lot of other things as well. They want to enjoy their work. And we know now the rising generation wants to work in the smartest way possible. So if you're not providing the smartest way, most optimized process, you're probably not closing the people that you want to hire into your organization.
And you're certainly not retaining the great people that you need to go the way that you're going.
100%.
Thanks, Zach. So just to summarize here, you've got to have your salespeople working on the things that they're good at, not on things that should be automated or should have a process separate from them. Thanks for joining us today for this conversation about optimizing your sales team. We'll be back next time with another episode. Keep on building your business.